right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Gosh, I want to show you how old I am by this next story. I don't really want to show you how old I am, but I guess I have no choice. In 1977, so you already know this is an old story, but I actually had a job in California with a music producer, and lots of songwriters were sending this producer songs on cassettes in those days. And I was in the room quite frequently with the guy who was going through these cassettes, and he would put the cassette in the cassette player, listen to maybe 15 seconds, take it out and throw it into the corner. And there was literally a pile of cassettes in that corner. Once in a while, he would push the button, listen to the song, and tilt his head and say, huh, and then listen to the whole song, read the words to the song, and then give them to somebody else. And eventually they would come back to me because my job was to transcribe them and put them into note form. So very, 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 very few actually made it anywhere. I don't know if it's exactly the same in the world of publishing. I'm always amazed because in the world of publishing, a publisher has to read a manuscript, or at least enough of a manuscript to get an idea. I don't know how they have the time to do all this. Our next guest has so many different important and interesting things to talk about. Samuel Marquis, I think you said you pronounced the S right, Robin?
I believe so.
Samuel was on the phone. He's the vice president of hydrogeology with the National Environmental Consulting Firm, and he's a talented author as well. So in addition to the two books that we have, one is called the Slush Pile Brigade, which, by the way, that's what you call that pile of books in the literary world.
Yes.
I don't know what we called it in the music world. It was just a pile of cassettes. But there's another book here called Blind Thrust.
It's about fracking.
And that's about fracking. So that is his area of expertise. So we are going to talk about fracking, and I want to hear about the Slush Pile Brigade as well, which he's taken that whole idea and made it into a thriller. Samuel, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Hi, Larry. Great to be here.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Louisville, Colorado. So that's where I live, out in Colorado.
Well, thank you for getting up early to be with us.
Yeah.
So the governor likes Blind Thrust, huh?
Yes, Governor former Governor Romer read Blind Thrust and couldn't put it down and wrote me a nice plug for it, so which I appreciate. So
tell the audience what a slush pile is. Explain that whole thing, because that's part of this story.
I love this story.
Yeah, it's slush pile. I wanted sort of somewhat of a catchy title. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what the slush pile is, but it is the manuscripts. They're delivered to agents and publishers that are kind of pile up and basically are the rejected manuscripts. But sometimes gems are found in them. Like Gone with the Wind, and so there's some other famous ones. Stephen King's, I think. Had 7 rejections in the slush pile before he actually got a book published. So. Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I didn't know that. And how does the book go from the slush pile to being published?
Well, somebody actually sifts through the long pile of manuscripts that are piling up. So it's not always the rejection. Sometimes things are actually pulled out of it that are actually successful. But it's just sort of the generic term for what piles up on an agent's or publisher's desk that's mostly rejections and stuff that doesn't even get looked at. So it's kind of taken on this term, and I made the Slush Pile Brigade of these guys who sort of come and triumph over manuscript that's actually plucked from a slush pile.
Okay, and is that a way in the book it's not it's underhanded. They're stealing what do you call it? Intellectual property.
Yeah, in the Slush Pile Brigade, the opening scene is the second best-selling author in the world. Australia, sort of the Australian, James Patterson, who's the most successful author in terms of total publications, and but he's basically he's with his agent, and they're basically stealing the idea, and it gets made into a blockbuster movie and book.
And we've heard similar stories. I can't think of one right now, but we've heard that kind of thing. Is it not even necessary, though? I mean, couldn't you just make as much money just by simply offering the normal royalties to an author?
I think really you might be able to, the intricacies in the publishing world and how I just wanted to do something on take an idea. I didn't want to make a big book on copyright infringement and make it a big legal thriller. I just wanted a nice simple idea where a no-name author from way out west that no one on the East Coast cared about, who's just lost his girlfriend, just lost his job, and just had his, actually a very good book named Blind Thrust stolen from him.
Which is coincidental.
Yeah, and so I wanted to just tell a story of the little guy, kind of almost like, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, going to New York and taking on big publishing.
Oh, my goodness.
And sort of that protective environment of, he's protected by the police. There's a Russian mafia. There's all kinds of things going on when he goes to New York.
But there's also that issue of integrity that you address, because it's like it was like stolen by the publishing company who gave it to the -- New York Times best-selling author to publish under his name, and so he's a rat as well.
Yeah, I think in the book it's actually the agent. His agent feels sorry for him because, remember, he has writer's block. He's having sort of alcohol and substance abuse issues, and he needs an idea, and he has writer's block. So his agent sort of feels pity for him, Anton de Benedictus, and helps him, and he just latches onto it too. So the opening scene, he starts reading through it and says, God, I love this. I always wanted to be a geologist and write about earthquakes. And so it's sort of like, and people changed in the course of it. So people, the villains aren't as bad as you think, and the good guys aren't heroic. So I want the characters to be real and.
So the character has written the book Blind Thrust, and you wrote the book Blind Thrust. So I mean, were you worried that this might happen to you?
No, I wrote Blind Thrust first, and I'm a working, practicing, hydrogeologist. So, and I'm registered as a professional geologist in 11 states, and I have a master's degree in geology, and I'm very, I've been studying geology along, 25 years. So I wrote a very authentic book, and even the words are all saying how authentic the geology and the paleontology is. So I said, well, what if, I'm an expert in this area, in generally as a geologist.
Right.
What would happen if a non-expert, but who was a famous writer, stole my idea? There's no way he could be authentic. And even the reviewers, I got one reviewer said this book is authentic because it can be authentic by a geologist because that's what he does for a living.
Right.
Just legal thrillers that are written by Thoreau and Grisha, they come across very authentic. Baldacci was a lawyer originally. So then I thought, what if some of that idea is stolen? And then I wrote subsequent to that, the Slush Brigade.
That's fascinating. So these two books really go together. Okay, so I want to make sure we talk about the fracking part of this because this comes up a lot on our show, but I wanted to kind of make sure we separated that talk from the talk of the books. So the characters in the books, Nick Lassiter and Joe High Eagle, who are they?
Okay, well, there are two different series. So the Slush Brigade is my Nick Lassiter. It's actually Nick Lassiter International Espionage series. It starts out in New York, and I don't want to give away the next book, which has already been written, and even the third one in the series.
Wow.
But he becomes morphs into from no-name, out-of-work author, and out-of-work geologist, and unpublished author to a more international espionage thing. So, sort of, goes more in a sort of, Daniel Silva or Jack Reacher kind of realm in an international, without giving away too much.
Right.
The second series is purely kind of what I do for a living, and that's my Joe High Eagle Environmental Sleuth series. And Joe High Eagle solves basically environmental crimes. And the second book in the series will be out this summer.
Oh, okay.
So I'm continuing two parallel series because I like to have a little bit of difference and not just stick with one character for 20 books or something like some authors.
That's right.
Let's take a little break. Samuel, is it Marquis? Yes. Is that how I say your name? Marquis?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be right back with Samuel Marquis, and I want to make sure we talk about fracking a little bit. Our listeners are probably anxious to hear your thoughts on that since it's in the news all the time. So we'll take a little break and continue our conversation about the two books, the Slush Pile Brigade and Blind Thrust, and of course the topic of fracking. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Sunshine this afternoon, high 83 to 85. Clear tonight, low 62 to 68. Sunshine tomorrow, high 84 to 86. Sunshine on Wednesday, high 84 to 88. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Jonathan Reed.
If you're anything like I was, the thought of getting older was the last thing on your mind. But here we are. For me, it started slowly. The lack of energy, never being in the mood. And when I was, I could never perform at my best. I tried pills and other treatments with minimal results, and all but given up on my sex life. Then I found the doctors at New Male Medical Center. Wow, they made a new male out of me. Feel like I'm 25 again. I have renewed vigor, so much more energy, and no longer worry about my performance. New Male treated me like my situation was one of a kind, with a custom treatment plan that really works. I feel great. They can create one for you too. It does not matter if you suffer from low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, or just want to last longer. New Male will help you.
Call New Male Medical Center today at 352-404-4779. 352-404-4779. That's 352-404-4779. It will change your life. 352-404-4779.
We're saving thousands with Robert Palmer.
So rule number one is always shop around. Always shop around. If you're trying to get a mortgage, if you're trying to get the best credit card, if you're looking at student loans, cell phone bills, you name it, rule number one is always shop around. Always shop around.
That's rule number one, just one more vital part of fighting back to stop being a financial zombie. Yes, you can take the mystery out of the complicated world of finances. Take charge when it comes to your money. Listen in on The Source in 96.3 FM and 1370 AM, Saturdays at 12:05.
Attention homeowners, if your sinkhole case was denied during the past 5 years or repaired, but there was little or no money left to finish fixing your property, you may qualify to receive up to $15,000 through a sinkhole repair management program in your area. This government program is offered to owners who feel that their sinkhole claim was unfairly denied or repaired, but there was little or no money left to finish fixing their property right. For a free inspection and consultation, call Sinkhole Savvy today at 813-403-7809. 813-403-7809. That's 813-403-7809. Sinkhole Savvy.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The Voice of South Marion reminds us that early detection is vital. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in the United States. According to statistics, 232,670 women and 2,360 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in the United States in 2015. Learn as much as you can and support cancer research. This message brought to you by the caring folks at the Voice of South Marion. All right, 12 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Samuel Marquis is on the phone, and the Slush Pile Brigade is one of two books we're talking about. And in the Slush Pile Brigade, there's an author who has a book stolen by an Australian novelist, and that book happens to be called Blind Thrust, which is the other book that Samuel Marquis has written, if I'm understanding everything so far right.
They're both intriguing.
Samuel, did you spend time in New York? How did you know the streets of New York intimately?
Yes, intimately.
Well, I've been to New York a fair number of times. I think recently my agent was in New York, and I went and visited her when I've had a couple literary agents and was kind of the traditional publishing route. So and my boys were college recruits for lacrosse, so I visited Bard College and Vassar and Wheaton and some schools that were near there, and they had a tournament near there. So I visited New York and kind of, while I was writing the book and took notes, visited my agent there, and then the rest, you just have to use your imagination a little bit. So a lot of those settings are made up and in my imagination, but I try and I love history, so I tie it to I created this old restaurant, the Victorian Club, and tried to make it, relate it to some of the old Victorian.
Was that a romantic element of the story?
No, it was more just a restaurant where I had some scenes, some very dramatic scenes, but very fancy, elaborate, old New York, you know. And so I built it all around Central Park because he's from Colorado. So Nick loves color. You know, he lived there with Natalie too. That was part of it. She's an agent.
Okay.
She's a literary agent. Okay. So.
And that's and Natalie is a very interesting character in herself. She is a deep thinker, but she knows what not to say and when to say things. Yeah,
and she's you know, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but she's inside the agency, and she's also, you know, working as kind of a covert operative for Nick's father, who's a CIA officer.
So let's talk about fracking a little bit. The word out of North Dakota is that fracking is really making a lot of people some good money up there, the workers as well as the corporations that are doing the fracking. And here in Florida, we've heard about the possibility that there could be fracking. I'm guessing the geology of this state compared to the geology of North Dakota is like night and day. And I'm guessing we have a softer. We don't have as much bedrock, I'm guessing, and so whatever statement anybody makes about fracking, am I right in thinking that if I say something about it, it's not going to be true every place on the planet?
You actually hit on the most important aspect of fracking, and that is and I'm a geologist, so here's the line of any scientist really is every site is unique, has unique geologic characteristics. So some are, you know, more of a, you know, we look at risk to receptors in terms of contamination, and some are more at risk than others. And in Florida, you know, you have an unusually shallow groundwater table, you know, only a couple feet down in most, you know, a lot of places. So yeah, and you have bedrock, you know, limestone virtually, you know, over a large portion of the state. So it's very different than North Dakota in terms of the geology. And it, you know, so fracking generally, you know, is different depending on the depth of groundwater, how close the receptors are, where people are living. All those are factors, you know. Okay,
so fracking in Florida, I'm just going to take a shot at this, would be more dangerous to the ecosystem than fracking in I don't know, someplace where there's more like bedrock. Or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't know how much fracking actually goes on in Florida. If there are,
I don't think there's any yet.
Natural gas reserves and oil. I don't think it's a big producing state.
Yeah.
So I think that fracking is probably not near the issue that is out here, out west. It's obviously a big issue, and especially with the earthquakes associated with them in some cases too.
Okay, and so that's the next question: is that true? I mean, do the earthquakes actually happen from the fracking?
Yeah, in my book, it's technically not fracking, it's deep well injection, but the process is the same when you're delivering huge volumes of water to the subsurface. In my case, it's deep well injection of hazardous waste, which, you know, still causes earthquakes. It's the same process, except for fracking has, you know, the trademark chemicals, and there's some sand that's added in addition to the water, large quantities of water.
Now, because the issue of fracking is so huge and hot and everything, have politicians actually approached you to get your opinion on there to make their side even stronger?
No, you know, most of the work that I do, I mean, I do a lot of expert witness work on in court cases, and but most of my sites really involve just hazardous waste sites that have contamination, petroleum hydrocarbons or chlorinated solvents, and we figure out, you know, how to clean it up, or in some cases it's caused trespass to other people's property, and then there's, you know, those people are you know, have the potential to receive damages, you know, awards of damages for that.
So in the context of the story in Blind Thrust, do we as readers, especially as lay people, I mean, do we get a sense through storytelling of the more accurate picture of fracking as opposed to anything sugar-coated that somebody might be trying to get us to believe?
Yeah, I think what you get in the story is the earthquake potential associated with fracking, and deep well injection, because basically they're not really that different. You're delivering water, and what that does is that lubricates the fault planes and causes these generally low-level earthquakes. The ones that have been happening in Oklahoma and Ohio and they've happened here in Colorado too, associated with this.
Oh, really? Now,
yeah, so you get a very accurate. The geology is very, gives you a lot of it, within the story of a thriller, because you have to sort of introduce the terms to lay people and make sure they can understand it. But it gives you a whole feel for, the science behind these earthquakes and what's causing it, how a corporation might handle it. And handle deep well injection, and how they would handle the earthquakes, and seismographs, and all that, and the USGS's involvement, the National Earthquake Information Center, is really here in Golden, Colorado. So,
could fracking take place in Wyoming? Let's say where the Old Faithful, because of all they say there's a large amount of magma. Is that what they call it? Magma?
Yes.
Lava underneath the ground. Would fracking upset all that and make that a big explosion like they're always talking about?
I don't know if it would actually. I think those earth forces, earth scale forces, like what's happening at Yellowstone, in terms of, there's definitely a fair amount of earthquake activity in that area too, because that happens to be at either a boundary or a kind of a mantle plume that's coming up. So, I'm not sure that a localized fracking thing would have an impact on such an Earth-scale force, just because that's so much bigger, Yellowstone. But it could have some kind of impact along the margins, potentially, I guess.
Are the reservations out there affected by this? We're told your family has an historical connection with Native Americans.
Yeah, I think I'm not. It would be most of the reservations that would involve sort of the Lakota, or the Sioux, and the Cheyenne would be in Montana, and North and South Dakota, and Nebraska. So I'm not sure that they're right next to where the fracking operations are, but it's they could have some potential.
Oh, wow! And so the first book that came out was actually the Blind Thrust, and now the Slush Pile Brigade kind of gives you like a backstory almost, although it's fictional. Mm-hmm. But you get are you going to take those two ideas and further them? Are the two characters going to appear elsewhere?
Yeah, they're going to continue on in series. So the first book is the Slush Pile Brigade. Even though I wrote Blind Thrust first, the first one to come out was the Slush Pile Brigade, which came out, like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And Blind Thrust just came out, last week.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so I kind of separated them a little bit, but I wanted them tied together. Yeah, so both series will continue. The Nick Lassiter International Espionage series is the Slush Pile Brigade, and the Joe Heigl Environmental Sleuth series is Blind Thrust.
Very good. I have a copy of each of the two books.
Yes.
How about I give both of them to one person? If you'd like the two books, the Slush Pile Brigade and Blind Thrust, these are both advanced reading copies, so I guess you consider them collector's items. Mm-hmm. Call me. I'll put them aside, and they will be waiting for you. The rest of us have to go buy them. By the way, I went to your the Amazon page, and you've got some really good reviews on here. Let's see. I looked up which book did I look up? Oh, I looked up the Slush Pile Brigade. Mm-hmm. So you've got 5 stars, 28 customer reviews. That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's just getting started. So hopefully it'll pick up some steam. I mean, because it's a good it's an indie story, in terms of it's a no-name author who's really, probably really more or less an indie author, and he's up against the powerful forces of traditional publishing, and yet in the book in real life it's harder.
Yes.
He's given a shot, and he just he's not trying to get revenge, because he just wants an apology. Mm-hmm. He's purist. He's kind of like Jimmy Stewart.
Exactly.
Well, Samuel, thank you for being on the air with us today. Besides Amazon, do you want to give us another website?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my website is SamuelMarcusBooks.com, www.SamuelMarcusBooks.com, and it has all the stuff on sort of my history, and it also tells about all the forthcoming books that are coming out, because there's going to be 6 this year.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, 2 from each series, and then 2 standalone
right.
suspense novels.
Thank you so much, Samuel. We'll put the information on the Facebook page, and we'll be right back.
I'm Pat O'Neill. House Republicans still trying to find a new Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan of Wisconsin repeating today that he doesn't want the job despite the urging of fellow congressmen.
I would fully support him.
New York Republican Peter King on Fox Business Network Sunday.